Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Desperate aliens sent a final plea. The human response left them speechless. The Galactic Union was crumbling. World after world had fallen to the Typhor Dominion, their war fleets cutting through defenses like a knife through soft flesh. Once proud civilizations were reduced to ashes, their home planets nothing more than burning graveyards. The Union's leaders had exhausted every possible strategy, every last weapon at their disposal. Nothing had worked. Now only a handful of their fleets remained, battered, broken, barely able to hold formation. They drifted in the darkness of space, their crews exhausted, their hopes fatting. The Typhor gave no mercy. Surrender was never an option. Any species that resisted them was exterminated. In a final act of desperation, Supreme Commander Kell of the Union Council gathered his remaining officers. His weary eyes scanned the faces before him, admirals, generals, diplomats. They all looked the same, defeated. "We have one last option," Kell said. His voice was hoarse, heavy with doubt. Admiral Vorl, a battle-hardened warrior with scars running down his reptilian face, leaned forward. "You mean them, don't you?" Murmurs filled the room. Some gasped, others exchanged nervous glances. "Humans," whispered a young officer. "That's just a myth." Kell exhaled slowly. "Is it?" He pressed a button on the table's control panel, bringing up an ancient star map. 500 cycles ago, the humans vanished. Some say they were wiped out, others believe they simply left. But there is one thing we know for sure. He pointed to a blinking marker, a distress frequency, one so old that it had been removed from most navigational systems centuries ago. "They gave us this," Kell continued. "A frequency, a message, and a warning. Only call upon us if there is no other choice." The room fell silent. "And you believe they will answer?" Vorl asked, his voice skeptical. "I don't know," Kell admitted. "But if we do nothing, the Typhor will wipe us out. This is our final chance." No one spoke against him. There was no debate, no argument. They had nothing left to lose. With a heavy heart, Kell sent the distress signal. The transmission pulsed through the void, carried across the ancient human frequency. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. Nothing. Some of the officers hung their heads, others cursed under their breath. Kell closed his eyes, feeling the weight of failure press down on him. And then a single reply. A voice, calm and unreadable, echoed through the speakers. "Message received, stand by." Every officer froze. The room became deathly silent, as if the entire Union had collectively stopped breathing. Vorl's claws dug into the table. "Did you hear that?" Kell's mind raced. It had to be a trick or a mistake, or the signal was real. A shiver ran down his spine. The humans were out there, and they had just answered. The command center of the Galactic Union's last remaining fleet was in chaos. Officers scrambled across the bridge, their hands shaking as they rechecked their equipment. The message had been real. A human had answered. Commander Kell stood frozen in place, his mind unable to fully process what had just happened. For centuries, humans had been nothing more than a legend, a footnote in history. Some believed they had never truly existed, just a fabricated tale to inspire hope in desperate times. Others believed they had been wiped out in some ancient war. But now, a voice had spoken back. "Are we sure it wasn't interference?" Admiral Vorl asked, his reptilian eyes narrowing in suspicion. "No interference detected," Lieutenant Rish, the Union's top communications officer, confirmed. Her long blue fingers trembled over the control panel. "Signal is genuine. We sent the message and they responded." Kell stepped forward. "Can you trace the source?" Rish's fingers danced across the console. The screen flickered as data streamed across it. The signal had originated from the farthest edge of known space, deep within an unexplored sector. "The source is outside any charted systems," she said, voice uneasy. "There's nothing there, no registered colonies, no recorded planets, just empty space." Vorl growled. "Then it must be a trick. Someone is playing games with us." "I don't think so," Kell murmured. His gaze remained locked on the screen. The human signal wasn't just coming from the void, it was moving, and it was moving fast. "The signal is approaching us," Rish reported, her voice barely above a whisper. At impossible speed. The room went silent. Kel's blood ran cold. No known species in the galaxy could move that fast, not even the Typher. What are we dealing with? Vorl demanded. Before anyone could answer, the ship's long-range scanners blared to life. Alarms rang across the bridge. Officers rushed to their stations, desperate to make sense of the incoming readings. Rish's breath hitched. We have an object approaching at relativistic speeds. No, several objects. They weren't there a moment ago, but now. Her voice trailed off in disbelief. Kel clenched his fists. Put it on screen. The main display flickered, revealing the deep void of space. At first there was nothing, just the endless blackness of the stars. Then out of the darkness they emerged, sleek angular ships unlike anything in the Union's database. Their hulls were black as the void itself, almost invisible against the background of space. No energy signatures, no emissions, just silent, deadly precision. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence. They were cloaked, Vorl muttered, his voice barely above a growl. That's why we didn't see them. They were waiting, Rish corrected. For the first time in his life, Kel felt something close to fear. These ships were nothing like the crude, brute-force war machines of the Typher. They weren't built for intimidation. They were built for efficiency. And the way they moved, calm, deliberate, predatory, felt eerily familiar. A transmission came through, deep and emotionless. Galactic Union distress signal received. We have arrived. The voice was neither hostile nor welcoming. It was simply a statement of fact. Vorl bared his fangs. Who are you? A pause, then a single word, human. The bridge went deathly quiet. The humans had not been extinct. They had not been forgotten. They had been watching. No one on the bridge spoke. No one even breathed. The word human echoed in their minds like a ghost from the past. Commander Kel forced himself to remain calm, but his heart pounded against his ribs. The rest of the bridge crew sat frozen, their eyes locked on the silent, dark ships that now surrounded them. Admiral Vorl's claws dug into the metal railing. His voice came out as a low growl. Identify yourself. Which human faction do you belong to? A long pause followed. The silence itself was suffocating. Then the human voice returned, calm and unreadable. Factions are irrelevant. We received your distress signal. You are in need of assistance. Kel exchanged uneasy glances with Rish. The humans weren't answering the question. It was as if they weren't concerned with political divisions, as if they operated as something entirely separate or perhaps above it. Rish cleared her throat, her voice trembling. You say you've come to help, but why? Humanity disappeared centuries ago. Most believed you were extinct. Another pause. Then in that same cold, measured tone, the voice responded. We left. A chill ran through the crew. Kel frowned. Why? For the first time, there was a shift in the human's voice, a hint of something deeper, something unsettling. Because the galaxy was not ready for us. A heavy silence settled over the bridge. No one knew what to say. The humans had not been wiped out. They had not been forgotten. They had simply chosen to leave. Vorl's claws tapped against the console. His sharp eyes flickered between the ships outside and the unreadable transmission on the screen. He was an old soldier, and his instincts screamed that this was a force far beyond anything the Galactic Union had ever encountered. And yet, they had come back. Rish hesitated before speaking. The Typher Dominion is destroying us. Our fleets are broken, our home worlds are burning. We had no choice but to send out a final plea for help. Another pause. Then the human's voice came through once more, this time with a quiet, almost eerie certainty. We know. Kel's mouth went dry. They knew. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the human transmission continued. We will deal with the Typher Dominion. Admiral Vorl bared his fangs. You say that as if it will be easy. The human did not hesitate. It will be. The room turned ice cold. Kel's breath caught in his throat. You don't understand. The Typher are unlike any enemy we've faced. They're ruthless, relentless, and their fleet is unmatched. Our most advanced weapons barely scratched their warships. For the first time, there was something resembling emotion in the human's response, a hint of amusement. We have seen the Typher fleet. The display screen flickered, and suddenly new data flooded their systems. Rish gasped. "What is this?" Kell's eyes widened as rows of tactical readouts filled the screen. Detailed schematics of Typher ships, weak points, fleet formations, supply routes. Data they had spent years trying to gather, now laid bare in front of them. "Impossible," Vorl whispered. The human voice remained steady. "We have already engaged them." A deep, uneasy silence gripped the bridge. Kell clenched his fists. What happened?" This time when the human spoke, there was no amusement, no hesitation. Just cold, absolute certainty. They lost. The bridge remained silent, the weight of the human's words pressing down on them like a crushing force. They lost? Commander Kell's mind struggled to process the statement. The Typher Dominion, the most ruthless and unstoppable force in the galaxy, had lost. Admiral Vorl's claws tightened against the railing. "What do you mean they lost?" His voice was low, disbelieving. The human's response came without hesitation. "We engaged the Typher fleet. The battle lasted 7 minutes." A cold shiver ran through Kell. 7 minutes? That was impossible. Even the Galactic Union's best fleets had barely survived against the Typher for more than a few hours, and the humans had defeated them in minutes. Rish's voice trembled. "How?" The human's response was disturbingly simple. Superior technology, superior tactics, superior understanding of war. Admiral Vorl's eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer." The screen flickered again, displaying live footage. What they saw made Kell's breath catch in his throat. A graveyard of Typher warships floated in the darkness of space, their twisted remains barely recognizable. Some had been split in half, others vaporized entirely. The wreckage stretched for miles, a silent reminder of absolute destruction. "We never saw this," Rish whispered, her voice filled with horror and awe. "No one did," the human confirmed. "The Typher have kept their defeat hidden. They do not want the galaxy to know they are vulnerable." Kell felt his claws digging into his palm. If they lost so easily, why are they still advancing? There was a brief pause before the human responded. "Because we let them." Silence. Vorl's fur bristled. "What?" The human's tone remained unreadable. The Typher needed to believe they were invincible, that no one could challenge them. It made them reckless, predictable. Kell's mind reeled. "You let them rampage across the galaxy." "We observed," the human corrected. "We studied them, we waited, and when the time was right, we acted." The weight of those words settled over them like a suffocating fog. The humans had been watching, studying, allowing the war to escalate, all while remaining unseen. Kell swallowed hard. "Then why help us now?" The human's voice was quiet. "Because the time for observation is over." A deep, uneasy feeling coiled in Kell's chest. The humans weren't just intervening. They were making a decision. Vorl exhaled sharply. "You said you will deal with the Typher. What exactly does that mean?" For the first time, the human's tone shifted. It was no longer distant or unreadable. It was final. "It means we will end them." The screen flickered once more. This time, the image was not of destruction, but of something else, something that made Kell's stomach drop. A fleet. A human fleet. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The ships were massive, their dark hulls reflecting no light, their designs utterly alien compared to the sleek curves of Galactic Union vessels. There were no visible weapons, no exposed engines, just silent, motionless giants waiting in the void, waiting for a command. A single word appeared on the screen. "Deployment initiated." The humans weren't just going to fight the Typher, they were going to erase them. The weight of the revelation settled over the Galactic Union officers like a crushing force. The humans had been watching, waiting, and now they had decided to act. Commander Kell stared at the screen in stunned silence. The fleet before him was massive, unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't just its size. It was the way the ship sat in the void, dark and unreadable, as if the very laws of physics didn't quite apply to them. Admiral Vorl took a slow breath, his fur bristling. "How many ships are we looking at?" The human's voice came through the comms, calm and measured. "This is a Vanguard detachment, 5% of our total fleet." 5%? Kell felt his stomach twist. The sheer scale of it was impossible to grasp. If this was only a fraction of their fleet, then how many more ships lay hidden in the depths of space? Rish's voice was barely above a whisper. How did we never know about this? The human's response was simple. Because you weren't meant to. A cold silence followed. The Galactic Union had believed themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had charted the stars, formed alliances, waged wars. And yet, in all their arrogance, they had never even noticed humanity's return. Kel forced himself to speak. What exactly do you plan to do to the Typher? The screen flickered. A new image appeared, a Typher stronghold world. Kel recognized it immediately, the Dominion's primary military command center. Its defenses were legendary. No force had ever breached it, until now. The image shifted. In place of the stronghold, there was nothing. A barren, scorched wasteland, completely erased. We already did it, the human said. Kel's blood ran cold. You destroyed an entire world? Voral's voice was hoarse. No, the human corrected. We removed it from the equation. Kel's breathing grew unsteady. How? A pause, then the human spoke again. We are not here to play by the same rules as the Typher. We are here to end them. The weight of those words settled over the bridge. The Galactic Union had called for help, expecting soldiers, fleets, and war. But humanity had returned with something else, an execution. The bridge of the Galactic Union flagship was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship systems as officers stared at the screen in disbelief. The Typher Dominion's strongest world was gone, not conquered, not occupied, but erased from existence. Commander Kell swallowed hard. What did you do? The human's voice was calm. We ended a threat. Admiral Voral's fur bristled. That was a heavily fortified world. It had planetary shields, orbital defenses, fleets stationed across the system. You're telling me you destroyed it in a single strike? The human didn't answer immediately. Then, in a voice devoid of emotion, he said, We don't fight wars, we finish them. A chill spread through the room. Rish, the communications officer, finally found his voice. You finished it just like that? One of the strongest military strongholds in the known galaxy. A new image appeared on the screen. It was a feed from the aftermath. The entire planet was scorched black as if some immense force had wiped it clean. But there were no craters, no debris, no wreckage. It was simply gone. Kel's breath hitched. This wasn't a bombardment, this was something else. You're right, the human replied. It was correction. Voral slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. What kind of weapon can do this? A pause, then the human spoke again. The kind that ensures that Typher will never threaten anyone again. Kel felt the weight of those words settle over him. They had called for help, expecting fleets and reinforcements. But humanity had brought an execution. What's next? Kel finally asked. The human's voice was steady. Your war ends today. The screen shifted, revealing something that made Kel's blood turn to ice. A massive formation of ships, larger than anything the Galactic Union had ever seen, was emerging from the void. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a judgment. The bridge of the Galactic Union flagship remained deathly silent. Every officer, every soldier, every being present felt the weight of what they had just witnessed. The Typher Dominion's strongest world had been erased, not bombed, not invaded, gone. Commander Kell turned to the human, his voice tight. What is that fleet? The screen displayed a vast formation of ships, larger than anything the Galactic Union had ever seen. Their sleek, angular designs were unlike any known in the galaxy, their hulls dark and shimmering, as if absorbing light itself. Admiral Voral leaned forward. How many ships? A Union officer checked the scanners, his fingers trembling. There are thousands, no more. I can't count them all. The human commander's voice came through, calm and composed. This is the first expeditionary fleet. Kell's eyes widened. The first, you mean there are more? A pause, then the human replied, many more. Silence, the sheer scale of the revelation sank in. The Galactic Union had fought the Typher Dominion for decades, losing system after system. And yet, standing before them was a force so powerful it had wiped out an entire Typhor stronghold in a single strike. And this was just one fleet. Vorl clenched his jaw. "We thought humans were gone. We thought you were just a myth." The human commander's voice remained steady. "We were watching." Kel exhaled, trying to process it all. "Watching for centuries." "Observing," the human said. "Learning, deciding when to return." "And now you've decided?" Kel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The screen changed. A dozen more Typhor strongholds appeared, marked in red. "We didn't come back for war." The human's voice carried no hatred, no malice, just certainty. "We came to end it." In the distance, the first human warships moved forward, breaking away from their formation. They weren't waiting for orders. They were already executing judgment. The bridge of the Galactic Union flagship was filled with an eerie silence as the realization sank in. The Typhor Dominion's mightiest fortress world had been erased, not bombed, not occupied, but completely obliterated, and the humans had done it without hesitation. Commander Kell struggled to find words, his mind racing. The first expeditionary fleet? What did that mean? How many more of these ships were hidden in the void? How long had they been waiting? The human commander's voice came through again, calm yet unshakable. "Our next move is already underway." On the massive display in the war room, new red markers appeared. Typhor strongholds, supply lines, shipyards. They were scattered across the galaxy, each one a critical point in the Dominion's vast war machine. Admiral Vorl took a step forward. "You're not just attacking the Typhor, you're dismantling them." The human's tone remained unreadable. "War is a disease. If you let it fester, it spreads. The Typhor have been the infection in this galaxy for too long. It's time for a cure." The Union officers exchanged uneasy glances. For decades, they had fought a desperate, losing war against the Dominion. And now, in a matter of moments, these humans had shifted the entire balance. Kell swallowed hard. "What do you want from us?" A short silence, then the reply came, "Stay out of our way." The cold certainty in the human's voice sent a chill through the room. This wasn't a war for them. This was an execution. On the display, Union sensors picked up new movements. Human fleets already en route to systems, their approach coordinated and merciless. One of the officers stammered, "How long have you been preparing for this?" The human commander's response was simple. "Since the last time we fought a war in this galaxy." Vorl's eyes narrowed, but that was centuries ago. The human finished, "And we didn't lose, we just left." The realization hit like a shockwave. The old legends, the forgotten records, humanity had been here before, and whatever had happened back then, they had chosen to disappear. But now they had returned. The comms officer's voice trembled. "Sir, I'm picking up something new." The display shifted, showing a Typhor fleet mobilizing. Dozens of warships scrambled into formation, their response swift. They had seen what happened to their fortress world. They weren't waiting to be the next target. "They're coming for us," Kell muttered. The human commander didn't seem surprised. "Of course they are." Kell turned to him, unsure. "Do we fight alongside you?" The human exhaled slowly. "You do what you need to survive." For a moment, Kell hesitated. Then he looked at Vorl. The admiral gave him a firm nod. They had fought for too long, lost too much. If this was humanity's war now, so be it. But they would not stand idly by. Kell clenched his fists and turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet." The human commander gave a small nod. "Then let's finish this." Beyond the viewport, the dark silhouettes of human warships surged forward, engines burning bright. And the battle to end the war forever had begun. The stars were on fire. The void between the warring fleets was filled with the dying light of exploding warships, their shattered hulls tumbling through space. Human vessels cut through the Typhor lines like blades, their weapons striking with merciless precision. The Galactic Union's battered fleet followed in their wake, desperately trying to keep up. On the bridge of the Union flagship, Commander Kell gripped the console, watching the battle unfold. He had fought the Typhor for years, always on the losing side. But this was different. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to erase the enemy. A warning blared across the ship systems. A Typhoon dreadnought was breaking through, its weapons locked onto the human flagship. "Human command, you have an enemy capital ship on your flank," Kell shouted into the comms. The response came almost instantly. "We see it." And then, before Kell could react, one of the human warships moved directly into the dreadnought's path. The smaller vessel had no chance of surviving. Its hull crumpled under the impact, its structure breaking apart in an instant. But in that single moment, it forced the Typhoon ship to slow, to hesitate, just long enough. A brilliant burst of energy cut across the battlefield. A human dreadnought, dark and sleek, unleashed a weapon Kell had never seen before. The Typhoon warship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. Kell's breath caught in his throat. What was that?" Admiral Vorl stood beside him, eyes locked on the display. "A weapon we've never seen before." The human commander's voice crackled over the comms. "They're breaking." Kell turned back to the battle. The Typhoon forces were collapsing. Their once mighty fleet, so feared, so unstoppable, was now scattering, retreating, dying. A Typhoon general's transmission broke through the chaos, his voice panicked. "We surrender, cease fire, we surrender." Silence fell across the bridge. For the first time in years, the Typhoon were surrendering. Vorl's expression hardened. "What will the humans do?" The answer came not in words, but in action. The human fleet did not stop. Another Typhoon ship vanished in a flash of unnatural energy. Then another, and another. The realization hit Kell like a hammer. The humans weren't here to win a war. They were here to end it, and the Typhoon would not be allowed to surrender. The battlefield had fallen silent. Where once mighty Typhoon warships had stood, only scattered debris remained. Their fleet, once feared across the galaxy, was gone. Not broken, not retreating. Gone. On the bridge of the Galactic Union's flagship, Commander Kell stared at the destruction in disbelief. The humans had not fought like any force he had ever seen. They had not accepted surrender. They had not left survivors. The Typhoon Dominion, the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, had been erased. A voice crackled over the comms, cold, efficient. "Objective complete." Kell turned toward Admiral Vorl, who stood rigid, his expression unreadable. They had begged for humanity's help. Now they were seeing what they had unleashed. Another transmission came through, this time from the lead human warship. A single message. "This galaxy is safe now. Do not call us again." Then, before anyone could respond, the human fleet moved. No words, no explanations, no celebration. They simply left. Ship by ship, their vessels blinked out of existence, vanishing into the void as if they had never been there at all. Within minutes, the battlefield was empty. The Galactic Union had survived. The Typhoon were gone. But as Kell watched the last human warship disappear into the darkness of space, a cold realization settled over him. The Typhoon had been a nightmare, but what kind of force could do this to them?